Welcome to Digging Deeper, YEG's Development Chat. I'm Dave Onashenko.
And I'm Ranon.
Today we're joined by two special guests here, both Akeem and Kingston, and we aren't in our office, as you can see. We're clearly in a beautiful building that, maybe would make a grand office. But this is Akeem and Kingston work for Beljan, and this is one of Beljan's latest projects, Oliver Exchange 2, and we're going to dive into it today. Let's introduce our guests. So, Akeem Brown, you are known as the conductor at Beljan. What does that mean, conductor?
Well, it means that I operate a train 9 to 5, and in the evenings, no, the conductor, essentially what it means is, as the conductor, I was responsible for the Station Park project in its inception, and because that was a train station themed development, I kind of took on the aura or the persona of a conductor, taking the train down the tracks, which is really just a fancy way of saying like a project coordinator, like kind of junior development manager. And then I'm also focused a lot on the leasing with the rest of our portfolio, tenant coordination. I assist with some of the permitting and all those kinds of details, and then I help out wherever else I can.
Awesome.
Very cool. And then Kingston Lee. Kingston, you're a concept builder with Beljan.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can take what you want from that, but really the name was just to encapsulate all the things and bits that I had to do starting on Beljan. It's been a wild ride, 7 years here, so I've had to do a lot on the project coordinating side at the beginning, and then I moved on to the financial role, did a little bit of the building of the property management portfolio, so It's been a bit of everything. I basically take the ideas and kind of build it from the ground up, whether that mean financially or whether that mean, physically swinging hammers. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you left your tool belt at home today, it looks like. So, well, that's great. So I said we're in this beautiful building, Oliver Exchange 2. It is right next door to Oliver Exchange 1, or Oliver Exchange as it was known before number 2.
And very recent completion. When was it?
Substantial was like late April, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So we're only a month and a
spring.
half out, really, since then. It's interesting. So we had Chris Talaba, who used to work with Beljan, on our chat previously, and he talked a bit about kind of some of the expanded notoriety that Beljan got as a result of Oliver Exchange 1, the first one, and how he said at least there was some interest, especially in the broader community, that was able to link Beljan and Oliver Exchange as a project and kind of recognition over and above all the work that Beljan has previously done along White Ave and things like that. What is it about, I guess, the retrofit of this historic telephone exchange building, Oliver Exchange 1, that led to this momentum and ultimately the desire to kind of construct this? What is it that's so unique about this project that's worked so well?
Yeah, so, at the time, I don't think we actually fully recognized how important Oliver Exchange 1 was going to be to our brand, the identity, and, generally just Oliver in general, the neighborhood. I think we were just positioned uniquely at the crossroads of 121, 102, and then subsequently the city decided to build the Oliver Bond, which created a lot more interest in this environment and community.
The Oliver Bond, for those who don't know, is what?
It's the bike link that connects downtown CBD all the way to Oliver, the neighborhood.
Nice.
So it's basically one continuous stretch of bicycle infrastructure network that allows commuters to go from Oliver to downtown in one easy kind of path. But again, like at the time we built this, we didn't really understand the impact it was going to have on us, quite frankly. We saw a building that was underutilized, designed specifically for something else. I remember walking into those basement rooms and those lower level rooms with full of battery banks, full of switching gear, full of things that you would never understand how it would actually relate to development like this today. But I think our visioneer Ivan, he had a very clear path and very clear idea of what it could be. And I think he got a lot of ideas traveling, figuring out what and how to turn historical buildings and then the significance of this historical building and how that kind of relates to building community hubs. So we took that idea, we looked at it from his kind of vision, and then we worked out what it could be. We did the numbers, we did the financials, created performance, and we kind of worked backwards to figure out what it could be today.
And it's a non-traditional way of doing things. Not every developer is out there cracking open old buildings, seeing what's inside, trying to figure it out and try to make a pro forma work.
Yeah.
Naturally, probably a little more challenging. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, it's challenging from a lot of angles, but specifically on the financial side of things, it was hard for us to have a lender walk in here without actually seeing the space finished and understand exactly what we were trying to achieve. Because conventionally, I think, as you guys know, retail in Edmonton isn't very well suited in most traditional lenses for second floor spaces,
Absolutely.
right? So for us to propose that we would be getting second floor tenants as retail spaces or those types of uses, it was a bit of a challenge at the beginning just to get a lender to understand that that was something that was achievable. So until we actually did that and proved that it was possible, it was a challenge to just, kind of formulate what that plan would be, what that valuation would look like, what those cash flows would look like, and ultimately how that pro forma would perform.
So why don't, either of you could speak to this? I mean, to make that second floor work too, there's a unique concept between now the two buildings of event space, like we're sitting in right now, of actual retail, some retail bays in, if I'm not mistaken, in Oliver Exchange 1, outdoor patio space here, and on top of the substation I'm looking at back there that looks really sweet. I'd love to have a pint up there on a nice day. So it isn't just your traditional, retail tenant, try to plug in someone with a National Covenant or something like that, Subway up on the second floor.
Right.
What is it that, how are you able to kind of get through that and find those unique, tenants to match with that vision?
I think that part of our design development is to think about the retail end user at the beginning of a project. So kind of like you were saying, it's a little bit unorthodox to start with the project and then work your way backwards. It's a little bit unorthodox to think about, okay, who do we want to be in the space, and then design accordingly, and then kind of work that into your kind of entitlements process and think about, okay, what uses do we want here? What are we going to have to rezone it to kind of accommodate for that? This space, OEX, the Foundry Room is on the second floor. It's a huge, very successful events business, and I think that I wasn't there at the very beginning, but I imagine that was part of the vision was, hey, we're going to have the back end of OEX be kind of pre-fitted for this kind of event space. I'm not sure if it's going to be like weddings specifically, but that was part of our design development. I think that's carried on to all the other projects we have where we think about, do we want a food hall here? Do we want a brewery here? And then we kind of think about that, and then we go to the market and deliver a product that we think a lot of, in our case, startups would be interested in kind of looking at because of the neighborhoods we find ourselves in. They're highly walkable, they're very community oriented. There's a lot of kind of walkability, high walkability scores as far as like just being able to access it. And when it comes to having a second floor retail, also like being able to access it really easily if you live in the immediate area. I think Oliver is like one of the densest neighborhoods in the city. It makes that proposition of second floor retail a little bit more approachable because there's not a lot of parking, so you don't have to worry about that if everyone lives here anyways as much. I mean, parking is still an issue, but we got to think creatively about it. But to answer your question, the retailers, we think about that at the beginning phases of a project, and we kind of design accordingly. And I think as far as like the actual like lobby when you walk into OEX, the first thing you see is this like kind of like 2-story like envelope. It's like really high ceilings. It kind of encourages your head to kind of pitch up and look around. And we think that kind of helps people like naturally find their way through a space and check out the rest of the building. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a space that's meant to be just naturally oriented without a lot of need for signage or things like that. You know exactly that it's very easy to tell that there's businesses upstairs. And so I wanted to bridge that a little bit into the vision that Beljan had for this building and how it kind of integrates with that building. So we're in OEX2, like literally probably 8 feet from OEX1. How are these buildings going to work together? What's the overall vision?
Yeah, I mean, I can take over a little bit from there. So the overall idea was to create a development in a building that really complemented what we've done with OEX1. As much as that space has proven successful for us and what it's done for the community as being a hub, we wanted to extend it even further because we knew that there was a bounty full of people and tenants and people looking for space to build on the success of Oliver Exchange 1. What was missing was a bit more of the outdoor space. What was missing was a little bit more of the connection between these two lots. And there was a building in the back, Substation 200, that needed to be addressed as well, right? It wasn't something that we could potentially demolish, so we need to find a way to integrate it together to build this one cohesive brand within the Oliver Exchange.
And we'll take a look at that maybe later on, but super cool. We're looking at it right now. I mean, part of that, obviously, you know, part of the vision of Beljan is looking at these historic properties, as we kind of alluded to before, and opening it up and having a very creative lens to do that. You looking at it from the financial side too, how does that pencil out? Because for a lot of commercial developers, it's easy to say, you know what would be great here? A bunch of standard CRUs that we can open up and we can get our you know, national and international tenants with strong covenants and walk away. How does that work on the financial side when you said, you know, we're designing this space with tenants in mind? We want a coffee shop, we want a brewery, we want to create community, but the fiscal conservative in me says, how does that pencil out? How do you convince the lenders and the investors?
It's very easy to look at a building like Oliver Exchange or any of the, you know, historic buildings within Edmonton and say, let's raise it, let's, you know, flatten it and build CRUs, or let's build more dense residential or whatever it might be. It's always a lot easier to go from scratch, but from our lens, a lot of the history and a lot of the storytelling that comes with a historic building and what ultimately creates the urban fabric for a city is important to keep around for us, right? So when you talk about the financial lens of how we make sense of all of these buildings, it's one of struggle, quite frankly, but thankfully we do live in a city that allows us to keep doing this type of development with the support of municipal and provincial grants that help us alleviate some of those concerns and, you know, a lot of the understanding of how we actually make these numbers make sense. So that's one lens of it, but I do want to stress that the importance of keeping the fabric of this history is important to us, and that's something that's driving Beljan and our vision to keep going. We find that the story is really important, and we don't want to lose it, you know, for a couple of dollars here and there, just because it's more financially responsible.
And I think that can go both ways at the same time. It can help you secure good tenants that really fit your brand as a company and the types of projects that you do. I mean, a lot of what you have is very local tenants, not just here, but through all your properties. It's not necessarily the national retailer, somebody like that, but
What we found is that, you know, when you go to interesting cities, quote unquote, what you find is, you know, unique development, unique local retailers that you want to seek out to understand the local community, right? And in Edmonton, prior to, you know, 2012 or whatever it might be, we didn't have a lot of those. We didn't have a lot of interesting spots where people would come in from Calgary or Vancouver and be like, hey, this is something that we want to check out. This is something that we want to dig a little bit deeper into and find out, you know, what that fabric of this community really looks like. We didn't have a lot of that. So we, as a team, we do a lot of traveling ourselves, and we find these unique developments and our understanding for what makes these cities interesting, and we distilled a lot of that into what we do today. So Oliver Exchange is an example of that. We looked at this building from that kind of a lens. We saw that, you know, there were constraints based on the history of the building, the unique architecture of the building, and because of those constraints, it actually allowed us to see better what the potential could be. Because if you could imagine, if you start from a blank slate, it'd be very hard to conceptualize something like this today. It'd be very hard to understand how you could make those numbers make sense. But because of that history and how it was originally built, we were constrained in what was possible, but it also allowed us to focus more intently on what we needed to do to that building.
very cool.
And speaking of history, I mean, so the building is 110 years old. It was an old telephone exchange. It was, what was the name of it here? The West End Telephone Exchange,
Yes.
so the West End of Edmonton at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it's you know, again, 110 years old, which by Edmonton standards is ancient.
It is,
right?
yes.
Or a young prairie city.
Yeah.
Ancient Rome.
Exactly. So no, absolutely, preserving these few you know, historical buildings that we do have is important as part of that storytelling of us as a city, of, you know, things that are valuable and that we can point to, as much as it might pencil to demo and put up your subway on a standard CRU.
Yeah, and I think if you think of it like from a supply-demand perspective, like the product of real estate that's out there, 90%, most of it is the brand new, you know, the greenfield, the kind of like standard CRUs. You know, there is more developers, I think, going into the space of adaptive reuse and finding these old historical buildings that have really good positions within neighborhoods. But I think that because there is so little of that activity, and we've tried to kind of pioneer and blaze a trail for that, the demand is higher for a group out there that it appreciates exposed brick and appreciates really kind of like really good neighborhoods and stuff. Where it's like, if you can kind of tap into that market and like mine that vein as far as you can really unearth a lot of really cool concepts and entrepreneurs in the city, because we're going through a bit of an entrepreneurial wave where like a lot of groups out there have a really cool concept idea. Like I know Brio in Oliver Exchange was a startup, didn't have an existing store, and I think they're one of the biggest bakeries in town now. Odd Company, they're brand new, like came out of nowhere. Like so, like these are the kind of groups where it's like if you build it, they will come. And I think that those kind of groups are not necessarily looking for the CRU next to Walmart and South Common. They're looking for this.
And it's great because, like you said, 2012, call it 10, 20 years ago. I know growing up when you talked about walkability and, you know, street-facing retail, you know, I had the fortune of at a young age doing a lot of travel into Europe and things like that, and then people would be like, oh yeah, like White Ave. And White Ave was the one example that in Edmonton people could talk to because it was the one kind of walkable area. No one was really going downtown at the time, that kind of thing. And now, like you said, with you know, Beljan helping lead the charge, but other groups as well, you know, in Ritchie, and we covered some of these little community hubs in our episode last week. And with obviously, you know, it's a build it and they will come, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing too. But these great startups, your Kind Ice Cream, your coffee shops, your Transcends, your whatever else, right? And multiple locations, and it's feeding a need. There's ample supply and ample demand for your greenfield CRUs that you had talked about.
Totally.
But being able to tap into this, and it doesn't even just have to be here, the dentist area. You know, these little community hubs exist in, you know, first-ring suburbs and stuff too, where people crave that.
But I think there's, at the same time, there's probably a reason that you guys have focused your efforts and energy in communities like Oliver, communities like Strathcona. What drives you there more so than maybe those first-ring suburbs? Is it activity? Is it population? Is it an understanding from lenders as to what some of those areas might be, as opposed to going out to Beverly or something like that?
It's really just the identity, the brand, and really the opportunity that we see in real estate for the type of clientele that we have. We've clearly developed something that resonates with the entrepreneurial spirit of our city and the people who like to, you know, try and build something for themselves as entrepreneurs. So for us, the idea is to keep going with that brand. It's to keep building. It's to make sense of how we take this Oliver Exchange building and distill down to the next one within the core as well, right? So yeah, that's really what it is. It's just a matter of the brand and how we kind of utilize it.
And carrying off of Kingston's point, I think that if you think about a city, I love what Ivan said in our Station Park promo video. He said cities are defined by their main streets. And we're a relatively young company, 10, 12 years old. So, I mean, assuming that we go on for the next 20, 30 years, White Ave and, you know, Jasper Ave and Oliver, these are kind of our main street areas, 124th Street. It's good to plant the flag there. If you can prove yourself there, you can kind of branch out from there. But I think that these areas are kind of mature. They're ready for experimental product. And I think if you'd like to, you know, especially the people who live in these kind of neighborhoods, you know, they want to be in the city. They like the 15-minute city idea, right? Like they like to be part of these neighborhoods. And speaking of 15-minute cities, like just look at these two buildings. Like you have everything you need within two.
Totally.
You know, you don't even need to leave here. You know, maybe if you wanted to get broccoli or something, I don't know. But like everything is here. You need.
I was just going to ask you, is there a grocery tenant coming upstairs here?
Yeah, that'd be awesome, right? Second floor grocery, that's even a thing now in the city, right?
And just to be clear, 15-minute city, you're allowed to leave, right? You're not restricted to your...
No one's telling you can't leave that 15-minute boundary. It's just convenient.
You may not leave us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So interesting phenomenon that's happened with some of Beljan products, and specifically when we're talking about OEX here, where other adjacent developments start using and talking about that as an attraction.
An amenity.
As an amenity, yes.
Totally.
Yes.
So the Jameson being built across
Yep.
the street talked about how great it is being here adjacent to Oliver Exchange.
Right.
It's like one of the best corners in Edmonton.
Right.
Does that make you feel proud to be a part of that?
100% makes us feel proud. I'm just going to echo a little bit of what Ivan has kind of instilled in me over time. And for those of you who don't know, Ivan's our kind of founding visionary and principal. He, at a time when he's developed and started Beljan, he found that a lot of his friends were leaving the city to go to Vancouver, to go to Calgary, to go to places that they found more interesting, right?
Sure.
That had more reason for them to be there. And he found it disappointing that people didn't see that value and that ability here within our own city.
Yeah.
Right? So, going on that, he wanted to develop a place and create a community in everything that we touch that convinced people that there was more available here in Edmonton, that created a brand that people understood that Edmonton had the opportunity to be something more than what these cities were. Mm-hmm. And because of that thinking, what he's done is he's kind of created a snowball effect where other developers, other city leaders, other community members are seeing the effects of how, focusing in on what's special about this city and building on it can also snowball into something else that tags along with that primary development, that snowballs into something much more meaningful for the neighborhood and then therefore the city, right?
Totally. And I can speak to it. I told you I live about a 10-minute walk away from here, and I think everybody in the community recognizes this as that central gathering space of the community now. It's only like OEX1 is not that old now, but it has redefined the neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah.
And it has created something that makes it really hard for people to want to leave and go somewhere else. There's tremendous value in that.
And the good mix of tenants too. I mean, we've talked before about Third Place, the gathering place outside of home and work. And when you have your coffee shop and a restaurant, you've got a bakery, you've got a brewery, you've got baby goods or whatever else. But those first three, especially, that's a place that you can go to every day for your needs and your gathering and all that. And so getting that right mix of tenants and designing for those tenants, is great. And what you guys have put together here is fantastic in helping create that community, that recognizable, development, and like you said, building from that, snowballing on.
So, wanted to ask you what's next for Beljan? Anything you can share or want to share in terms of other projects or things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Akeem Brown, you've been, principal on one of our most key developments on White Ave, so maybe you should lead off with that.
Yeah, sure. I am the conductor. This is one of our probably most exciting projects to date. It's kind of an adaptive reuse, not of the building, but right next to it, and kind of taking cues from the history of it. The CPR building on Gateway was built in 1891. It brought people into the city of Strathcona. We had this plan to kind of honor the history of that by building a brand new kind of train-themed envision of the past with micro retail as a new product. So it's called Station Park, and we're very excited about it. It's going to be opening in the next 2 or 3 months here. We're just kind of in the last phases of construction. But the idea of it was to take cues from the old history of the train station, integrate that into the design with shipping containers, with a really cool exterior when it looks like it kind of looks like a train, like an actual train when you drive by. But yeah, micro retail. We just saw that during the pandemic there was this kind of draw towards having more intimacy with your clientele, whether it be online or otherwise. And there was kind of this new niche pocket of retail in retail and commercial real estate where there wasn't a huge need anymore, and there still is, for the 1,000, 1,200 square foot CRU, where it's hey, we don't need all this extra space. We're just paying more on op costs. We're just paying more on you name it. We can take less space, maximize our space inside. Maybe the storage becomes inventory. And the inventory becomes stuff we sell, and it's kind of that model where it's as soon as we sell, we're closed kind of thing. And we can have that intimate experience with our clientele. That micro retail movement that kind of started in Europe, it's kind of made its way into North America. We thought that there could be a really cool, ripe opportunity for that on White Ave, which has had a really rich retail past. But I think it's going through a bit of a renaissance there after a few rough years on White Ave, where there wasn't as many retailers coming to the street. But yeah, Station Park, it's going to be a really cool project. It was actually really intricate because we had half the land to the north of the CPR rail site. If you'll remember, it was the MKT patio, and then there was an asphalt pad, and then just north of that asphalt pad was actually a city park, and that city park is actually part of our project as well. We went through a lot of design iterations where we had the project going all the way to White Ave, and then we had to pull it back, and then we've kind of landed on this design where all the land that we own up to the end of the asphalt pad is going to be a 3-story structure, second and third floor food hall, ground floor is going to be bays, 40-foot by 8-foot wide bays, micro retail bays, 320 square foot each. There's going to be 11 of those, and then the food hall is about 8,500 square feet. If you drive down Gateway right now, you'll see it. It's almost done. And then to the north of that is the city park. So we've actually had to enter into a lease with the city to program the land. So we're actually taking on a lease for 5 years. It was a park space. So we've kind of thought that, hey, we can have the park. We can put these containers there. They're kind of they're modular in nature, so we can build them off site. We can have these really cool retail concepts. Those containers are 20 feet long by 8 feet wide. They're 160 square feet, and they're going to be filled with really cool startups and retailers who been in the basement, or they've been on Instagram, or they've been at the farmers market or trade shows, and now they have their own home. So it's really cool kind of mix of those groups, and then also some established groups. We have a group that's coming in there that's going to be doing essentially what we are doing right now, media, podcasts and radios, but they're going to be renting it out to different people who want to use the space. So in the future, if you guys can't get a hold of us for
totally.
we know a guy. You know a guy.
So that's really cool, though. You're bringing up something that we've been hearing for a long time, which is people are looking for that, or tenants are looking for that smaller type of retail bay. A lot of times, and maybe that's changing right now in Edmonton. But for example, Manchester Square, not one of your projects, but I think they had something like 18 retail bays in a fairly standard sort of strip mall type of development, a significant number of smaller retail bays. And a few years ago, West Edmonton Mall had kind of their little pop-up shop kind of situation going on to create these spaces for smaller businesses, those guys that were operating out of their basement but want to have a little bit of a presence in the market. And now maybe we're seeing that shift towards maybe some of those retailers need that permanent space. It can't just be a pop-up shop. They need to be able to put their own stamp on something as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want a place to call your own, a place to call home. A pop-up is great, but you want a sense of permanence and a place where people know they can come and find you on a regular basis, and you build that community, right? That's the biggest thing about OEX that I think is unique. The community comes here because they know that this is a permanent kind of, you can call it a mall. I'm not sure what you would want to call it, but it's more of a kind of community collective of stores.
We like to call it an inward-facing strip mall.
Sweet.
Just simply because it is what it is, right? We built an atrium. We have a bunch of tenants that play off of each other. We have Kalina feeding people and individuals from the Foundry Room who are hosting events. We have the coffee shop supplying them as well. Home goods for anyone who's trying to do the registry with them, et cetera, et cetera. The tenants all play off one another.
And that's a fantastic point. For Station Park, that was the idea too. We wanted to have this sense of community where a lot of the tenants would be able to feed each other. So for example, the food hall, it's with a group called the Fifth. They used to be called the Fifth Street Food Market. Now they're called Epic. Right. So Epic is going to be downtown, and they're going to have their first store was downtown, right by the Mercer, across from Rogers.
105th there, right?
105th Street, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're working with them right now to program that second and third floor massive space. It's probably double the size of this as far as just square footage. Beautiful views of downtown, but they're going to be doing this kind of really cool model with different celebrity chefs and different food operators in the city to do these kind of really cool streamlined menus, awesome offerings. But they're going to work collaboratively with the ground floor tenants to make this kind of cool offering. There's going to be the radio station promoting other tenants on site. There's going to be a courtyard with a stage, and there's going to be a lot of activation and programming and things like that. So we do design the buildings with the end user in mind, but we also hope, our dream is that they all cross collaborate and become almost like cousins in a family. And they all show up to the barbecue and bring their own kind of potato salad, right?
That's really cool. Well, maybe we need to do another one of these at Station Park and
Totally, man.
kind of talk it through.
I'd
That
be happy to have you there.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you guys very much for doing this. We're going to tour around here a bit, but we really appreciate this. If you guys watching at home or watching at work or on your phone haven't subscribed already to us on YouTube, we're also on Spotify. Check us out. We have new episodes coming out every other week. Thanks again.
Yeah.
And looking forward to doing this again, learning more about some of the cool stuff you guys are doing and checking out some other projects.
Yeah, thank you.
My
guys.
pleasure.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, sure.
Very cool. Yeah. And you've got kind of the timber.
Yeah.
Oh, that's structural.
That is
as well.
structural. All
Yeah.
that timber is structural. We specify a natural lighting to keep that natural and unpainted because we find beauty in a lot of this timber that we put in.
And I'm sure a lot of tenants would see that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, and then outside there's a big patio with a courtyard. That's our substation 200 building, and then just our right here, that's the original Williams building.
Very cool. Well, I can even see down there you've got the bench. So it's kind of the in-between, could be industrial type of feel, but it should have that kind of spillover to the
Yeah, exactly.
iconic
Exactly.
vibe. Yeah.
Talk about that third space and everywhere that we're looking at where there's this underutilization of that kind of space. Yeah. We're looking at it as how do we
Yeah.
energy activate day and night 24/7.
Sweet. Oh, that's really cool.
We're entering Oliver Exchange. This is the central foyer, lobby. Plum, fajita, brio.